patient with us as we all try and figure this out. And as I try to get over the fact that I'm echoing in my own ears right now. We're doing our best. So this Nite Caps is the part 2 of a series with the Heartland Workers Center. And we're going to be going over the primary elections and the census. So last week we tried to cover COVID-19, and what workers' rights are. It'll be okay. Okay, we're just going to test it out like that. And this week we're going to be going over the primary elections, the 2020 census, as well as what planning looks like for Nebraska for the next, I don't know, future, I guess, the entire future of it. I hope Senator Vargas is ready to share all the future plans. But if you guys if you guys could go ahead and introduce yourselves and give us a little background about who each of you are. If you want to start, Gabby.
Yeah. My name is Gabriela Pedroza. I'm a community organizer with Heartland Workers Center, focusing on the North Omaha area.
Awesome. All right, Senator Vargas.
Hi, everybody. My name is Senator Tony Vargas. I represent downtown and South Omaha in the Nebraska legislature in Lincoln, and I've been in that position since 2016, proudly serving District 7.
Awesome. And what does District 7, where is that in the state?
Yeah, District 7 is one of the 49 districts. It is all of downtown, so anybody that lives in the many apartments or condos or homes in downtown Omaha, and then it represents East South Omaha, all the way down to Bellevue, Sarpy County. That's the line, and the district changes a little bit here. I think right after this census, which I'll talk about a little bit. But that's my district boundaries.
Awesome. All right, Ryan.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Menchaca. Been in Omaha for the last 7 years. I am in the music scene, acting. I have an embroidery business, outdoor enthusiast, going to school for forestry and environmental science via UNO. And yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you
Thanks
all.
for having me.
Yes. Thank you guys all for virtually being here with me. I'm like looking at my screen, but also realizing I need to look up at all of you through another lens. Okay, so I just kind of, before we dive into a whole lot of this, I want to just talk about how we've all had to slow down or speed up or somehow a combination of the both, it feels like. At least for me, I feel like I'm speeding up, but the moments are going faster. I don't know. I can't really describe time right now. But with that kind of happening, as we've started to slow down, what are things that you guys have noticed? Either like signs, some people say like call them signs, or connecting things, or just something that you've noticed maybe on like your personal journey that you've learned from being slower in this COVID-19 era.
I think one of the biggest things that I personally and just seen in the community where I live and where I work is a lot of closed doors of restaurants and businesses, and it's kind of sad. And also mentioned earlier, it's scary to think that this is normal now, that we don't think about what it's gonna be when it's open again. It's gonna be lively, but this is the normal. Like we've becoming adjust to what it's looking like in the environments and just being extra cautious. I think personally, I've had the time to homeschool my daughter, so I'm learning a lot about first grade. Very advanced since when I went. So just taking time to appreciate my time with her and my family, even virtually. But it's a great fear that we'll become too used to this.
I know I see like jokes online being like, I'm not going to know how to make eye contact with people after this.
Yeah, getting any kind of closeness, relative closeness, whether it just be day-to-day interactions that I'm so used to, but there's now another lens in which I'm seeing the world, and being more courteous or cautious. But I think it's the courteousness that resounds with me. I feel as though I have more of a duty now to adhere to, and it's hard to watch those that aren't taking part in that, but I'm also learning how to just kind of slowly cycle through the way that I feel, and the way that I'm watching people close to me and how they're affected deal with this kind of new pace. Like you said, being forced to slow down, I think that there's a lot of kind of slow burning, meditative perhaps meaning that's embedded in everyday life that we usually don't get to look at and observe and allow to pass through us. And so that has been transformative, but not the most fortunate kind. So that's been humbling.
This is Tony. The thing that I'm just realizing a lot more is I think we all, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but, social media and everything that's been happening, through, either Facebook, Instagram, what have you. I think previous to this, I think a lot of people, including myself, thought, one of the main ways that we interact with each other is through that. And it's just moving closer to that. But I've been really pleasantly surprised that there really still is no substitute for human interaction. As much as we've been engaging online and like this, it provides mediums for that. But at the end of the day, we're such social beings. I think the new normal that I'm realizing, and is going to be difficult for everybody, is we still thrive off of being able to see each other and shake each other's hand, give each other a hug, and show each other love and compassion. And it's that's the part that I appreciate so much more now. And once we get to this place where we're slowly doing that, which I don't know what that's going to look like, it's just like appreciate it. So it's like if any of you have ever broken your leg or your ankle, after you've been off your feet for a month or 2 months, you have this faith and belief in, oh my gosh, it is so amazing to walk. And you took for granted walking beforehand. And now I think we're going to have that moment, and we're having it once we have a little bit more, we've been back in a new normal. So.
Beautiful. I have kind of going off of that communal aspect. I'm a total empath. And so I've been kind of struggling with, like, I go to my full-time job and I hear my hours are cut, and then I go to my other job and that job is completely done, and then this Nite Caps has to be adjusted like this, and I have relatives who are sick, and et cetera, and all these things are happening to me that haven't happened before, as is everybody else. And then I see these other people in our community who have it worse than us, or in other countries who, have to choose between going to the communal source for water and risking the threat of getting diseases over there. And then I automatically feel bad for my own grief and emotions. I don't know if you guys have been feeling that way, or how you've been able to hold space for your own mental well-being, as well as the communities that you lead, or how you guys have been able to handle that, if that's even a concept. I don't know.
I think kind of like Tony just said, there are certain mechanisms in being human that we take for granted or don't realize play a big role in regular interaction, like a handshake or a hug. Seeing my father the other day, or a good friend, and making a point not to hug them, that feels incomplete. So those then that are leaders, like everybody that I'm peering into on this pixelated screen, they're, I mean, I guess it's more of a question too. Do you feel like there have been certain roles that by proxy have been stripped from your ability to be a leader as much as you are, I suppose? And I guess I've been feeling that I'm not able to flex that muscle. I'm not able to exercise that, and I miss it, and it feels weak as of lately. But kind of a loaded question answer thing. But I do have to add, I'm humbled. It's humbling to have realized what's now missing, that it's not normal, that things are a lot different.
Yeah, this is Tony. The only other thing I will say is, it hits people so many different ways. And, hearing Maria, you say you're an empath, like there are so many different personality styles, the way that we show it and receive, and compassion and friendship, and all those things are, I don't know, they're just thrown for such a loop during this time that, at least for me, the thing that I've struggled, with myself in this is, as a person in an elected office, and also a person that is like, father and a husband, and trying to make all those things work. The deep appreciation for balance is, we don't have full balance in our household. We are pinch hitting and helping each other, and there's families all over the world doing that, and have been doing that for weeks on end. And it's just, I don't know, thinking about on how moments of difficulty bring people together. And I'm not talking in just like the random, I'm talking like our family units and our friends. I hear stories of friends that have been cooped up with each other for a month now because they've been together, they're roommates, or people are abroad, with other individuals, and they're just making it work. So I'm humbled by that piece of all this, which is, I think we've developed a new type of, compassion in a difficult time.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like our ability to have compassion as a community has really changed, and we're just kind of more in tune with each other than we really previously have ever been, which is ironic considering we're with each other less and less. Awesome. Okay, thanks for hitting that emotional mental break with me. I like to kind of start there sometimes. See if I can crank a tear out of myself beforehand. Usually it does happen, but okay, we'll keep going. Okay, you, Senator Vargas, you kind of mentioned earlier that you are District 7, but I also just kind of want to hear a little bit more about the communities that all of you serve, and why those communities are really important in the focus that we have right now with the primaries and the census.
Let me unmute that. Okay, so this is a really interesting, important time. Normally by itself, it's important, and I'm not alone in this. I know the Heartland Workers Center and Gabby and Gabriela understand this. Is it put aside COVID-19, this period of time has, voting and what we're, getting to is a census that is so important on its own. But what makes it more difficult now is we are heavily reliant on individuals to complete the census in a new time where normally we would have people going to homes and canvassing and talking to them and trying to pacify people's real genuine fears about what the census is and where the information is shared and if the government is asking them information and whether or not it even matters in their life. And those things happen. That trust is built through one-on-one interactions, not just from community organizations like HWC, but also from, elected leaders like yourselves on the call that can speak to this is important. And so that's just harder now. And, the importance of it, which, I'm not going to talk, I'll see if we have some more questions on that, but the importance of the census cannot be understated. It's probably the most important thing that most people don't know how much it affects our life. We're lucky. Nebraska is right now somewhere in the 50% range of completion and growing. And that's great. But every single person that doesn't complete the census, we can equate to dollars lost. And those dollars lost are on things that matter to us. They affect our Medicaid dollars that gets sent to Nebraska. They affect food stamps, housing vouchers for low-income individuals, free and reduced lunch, special education funding, the list, Head Start, the list goes on, and they appropriate what we need from the federal government to us. And so, it is uniquely positioned to, this is, without going too much farther, and I'll stop in a second, this is about equity. The people that we have a harder time accounting for completing the census, this is low-income individuals, people of color, people that are more elderly, tend to be the same individuals that they're the hardest to count, and they're the ones that are going to be the most likely to benefit or receive the programming that comes from that funding. And so it is such an important time to be able to focus on that. We got to do everything we can to get the word out and also address any misconceptions people have about it so that we set ourselves up for the next 10 years, which is what these next 3 months does.
Thank you. Gabby, how have you guys pivoted over at HWC from, I know you guys are mainly out in, correct me if I'm wrong, South and North Omaha, and usually out canvassing because I've canvassed with you guys before and I absolutely loved it. But how have you guys been able to adapt and pivot your plan and goals in the midst of not being able to have this human interaction?
So it's definitely been a change. We work in 8 areas of Nebraska: north, south, west, Bellevue, and rural areas. So by now we would be canvassing Monday through Thursdays and Saturdays. So it's been a huge change because, that interaction with people, that building relationships, it's in a way cut off because we don't see faces. We don't have a more personal interaction. It's just through by phone, where there's also a lot of other organizations calling and people running. And so it's like, who do you talk to? But it's definitely, we still have good conversations over the phone, but it does take away from that relationship building chance to people with people. So now we're just phone banking from home. All of the organizers and volunteers that have come on board with us. And I believe we have made over 36,000 calls by now in the past few weeks. So it's been a lot of phone calling, but it's affected the way that we reach people, because other than canvassing or door-to-door knocking, we had planned to do presentations on the voting, why it's important, how do you do it, but also the census and workers' rights, because people are still working and there's still problems in the workplace. So it's like, how do we still do what we can to raise awareness of what's important and be safe and understand that fear of other people that is understandable. But how do we go forward?
Yes, and planning this, we were like, okay, we need to talk about workers' rights. We need to talk about unemployment. We need to talk about the election. We need to talk about the census. There's so much that needs to be talked about that it almost seems impossible just to try and call somebody up and just spit them out all this information without overwhelming them. So how do you guys, when you're out talking to people, how do you prioritize what you're talking about?
So another thing going with that, because I put myself in the caller's perspective. It's like, okay, how would you feel if you get 10,000 calls a day talking about the same thing? But I think one of the biggest strategies that has worked a lot is called relational organizing. Is when we contact our group of friends and families, and we feel more comfortable giving them the whole spiel. Okay, you contact 5-10 other people that to do the same. But I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, that definitely helps answer that question of just when there's so much information in this age that we're in. I mean, there's always so much information around elections and the census. It's just, how do you prioritize that? And then depending on who you're talking to, do you adjust what you're saying to them?
Yeah, so I think depending on who we're talking to, like, our messaging changes just because, like, okay, we kind of think of it as an elevator speech where you have 35 seconds to keep their attention and get your message out, but do it in a way where you can interact, maybe like have a conversation, because I miss talking with people. But it's like, you have to think, okay, each person is different, and I have to make it interactive and lively and kind of pretend they're in front of me and be like, hey, how are you?
Yes.
It's like, we've also amped our social media a lot, which is thankfully has been getting good reviews and good views. But yeah, I think with each person is different, and there's no right or way. You just have to think, okay, you have 35 seconds to keep their attention and get your message out. Go.
I was cracking up at the posts you guys had the other day of Sergio and remind me her name. They were running. It was
Abby.
so funny. Abby. Oh my gosh, yeah. I was laughing at that. Senator Vargas, the same question posed to you. You're up to be reelected this fall. And so one of the main ways that local politicians get their name and information out is going door to door. And I know you have always championed that, especially in this neighborhood that that some of us are in on this call. But how have you and your campaign been going out, to get your message across, to make sure that your constituents know who you are, what you're fighting for?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It actually hurts my heart a little bit that I can't go door to door. I love going door to door. It's my favorite part of campaigning, and because I find that people get to see your vulnerabilities for the first time, or for the second or third or fourth time. They get to I think we all have a pretty good bullshit meter. And at the doors, you can tell whether or not somebody's really throwing some serious BS your way. And I think sometimes it's a lot easier. And this is why that relational, networking or calling that Gabriela's talking about works, is it's a lot harder to do it. It's a lot harder to tell how somebody is on the phone. I mean, you can, but in person, you can really tell whether or not they're being their authentic selves. There's just that tinge. And so I missed that because that's how I won my election the first time. And, we knocked on 35,000 doors in the election. And, we knocked on doors before this all happened, but not nearly like we would have if we didn't have this happening. And so it changes things. We're making calls to identify voters, especially those that are doing vote by mail. We are sending mail pieces like we always have. We are, I believe, the only campaign that is doing every mail piece in English and Spanish, both two different pieces. So I spend 2 times the money of other people because I recognize that my district represents the largest Latino serving district in the state. And cultural responsive, mail and education is might be more expensive, but is always the right thing to do. And so we continue to do that. We continue to focus. I think social media matters even more. Like Abby said, it is the bridging the divide. We have people of all different ages on all different social media platforms now, and that's what we're really trying to focus on as well. And then honestly, the other part of this is when I was campaigning the first time, I campaigned off of ideas. And now most of my work, which I don't have any regrets about, most of my work has been reacting to what's been happening in the community, fighting to try to, I've been working with HWC on labor and meatpacking plant rights. We've been working on trying to get the census out. We've been working on increasing voter registration and vote by mail. We're working on budget issues at the state level and what life looks like beyond here in the next couple of years, and unemployment applications and small business applications. So most of my time has been working with constituents, and my hope is that turns into a little bit of the organic, hey, this person has been fighting on and working with us to try to make these things work. And that's a one way to go about campaigning in a different way, which is doing my job. And so I'm going to keep working at that and keep making calls and hope everybody, I can get the word out about my campaign. And that's the same for all candidates right now.
Yes. Thank you so much for both of you for being able to pivot your regular day-to-day jobs in this time to keep people informed. Ryan, I know you recently moved. Have you heard or gotten contacted by any either nonprofits or officials running for office about what you are passionate about or what you are interested in them while they're running and stuff?
No, I have not.
Do you know who you, do you, I know you just moved, so this is
we're gonna
this
have
is
to
like
fix that, Ryan.
Yeah.
The answer.
You got some addresses coming your way.
Okay, good.
I know that was like maybe a week ago, so it's kind of a quick, fast
Yeah, it's
turnaround.
very, very fresh. Yeah.
to ask you that.
I just adopted a puppy. Maybe she ripped it up. I don't know.
That's okay. Okay, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about just Nebraska's government. I know that we have a unicameral, which is very unique to us. Either Senator Vargas or Gabby can kind of take this one over on just kind of explaining the benefits or downfalls of having unicameral and whether or not you can get things done faster or maybe slower.
I'm really interested to see how Gabby talks about this because, and I'll fill in the gaps here, not the gaps, but because it feels more important to hear from the perspective of somebody that has been advocating on issues, trying to get the ear of people like me and how successful we've been to actually make things happen. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit to that, Gabby.
I love that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be frankly honest. I love it. I love that we're a unicameral. Before I started working at Heartland Workers Center, I didn't really know how to advocate or how to talk to representatives. So the only experience that I've had with legislature and government, state government, is from Nebraska. I did get to recently experience the federal advocating and lobbying and federal level. But I'm so used to how to do it here that I'm just like, what, is there any other way, I like it because we get to talk to everybody in the same place. I think our experience that we've had to bring people to the house, to the legislature, it's been an amazing experience. Just people's reaction to the interactions that they have with their own representatives is amazing. And even from my own experience, I used to be terrified of talking of someone that's a representative or like, oh my gosh, like they're making laws. it's a frightening experience, or just thinking about it. But having the chance to experience it myself over the years it's amazing. Like you really get to talk to human and just being heard and being able to share that with community people and bringing them to the legislature and be like, hey, this is a person from your district, and just their own experiences, like, when can we go again?
Yeah, I was
So,
talking to
I really like it.
I was talking to a few of my friends who don't live in state about last week and this week, and I think I mentioned this last week too, but they were so surprised that I was able to get Senator Hansen and Senator Vargas on the call. And one of my other friends who's from Omaha's like, yeah, they'll come out to our art events and are really trying to get in the community. I know that's not probably all of them, but we're very grateful to have legislators here who are putting themselves where their constituents are. Senator Vargas, you want to help bounce off that?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That's an inadvertent compliment to the senators, and I'll tell you that it's I like thinking this is an ecosystem. I think the reason why senators feel more comfortable and are more engaged is not only because many of them have this, penchant for wanting to be part of the community, but it's also that they're being asked. I think, like, over the years, one of the things that has been really great is I've it's not just Gabriela, it's others at HWC. We've worked on a lot more different issues, and when I'm asked, I want to collaborate more. And there's other organizations and people and entities that are really not. And this is not set up in any way. This is the truth. HWC did a survey in 2015, and one of those survey questions, I'll never forget it, was like, how many people feel comfortable enough to contact their elected officials? That measure is so important. You don't see that on many different surveys, at all, but it's so important because it tells you the health, and it wasn't really great.
I was going to ask.
But I think as a result of organizations and people and things like this, my hope is more people will call, will contact through social media, will email, and see it as more of a normal thing to do, rather than, well, they're not going to contact, they're not going to listen to us, it's not worthwhile, it's government. And so that part, I think, happens because of the back and forth in this ecosystem. The other thing I'll say is the system is set up to be, I think, better than, I've never served in another government. I've only served in the Omaha Public School Board, and but our unicameral being nonpartisan, 49 senators, it is one house. We don't have a party system that's set up to then create strategic priorities, or it works better. In my mind, it works better than if we had a party system, because I have colleagues that I deeply respect and consider friends, and amidst, that are texting me or calling me on a daily, every other day, weekly basis on issues that I think things supersede parties sometimes. And that's because we each have a voice and we each have a vote, and it's not much of a barrier. And so I think it works better here. But the last thing I'll say is, like anything, it's not just, I like that really slow zoom in that just happened. It's like, so like anything, just the structure set up, like any company or business, doesn't mean that everything works perfectly. It's about culture, and the people that are part of inside of that help create the culture. And the Nebraska legislature, I can point to colleagues that, like a Senator Coulterman from Seward, or like a Senator Stinner, or like a Senator Howard, work very hard to create this collegial, nonpartisan sort of nature. And it's that leadership, what those individual senators do to focus on people and relationships over party, that make it work better than not. And so I'm really thankful to be part of that, because you got to nurture these types of things. You got to nurture culture, right? It doesn't happen on its own. And so same thing happens in government.
Mm-hmm. Nurture the culture. Ryan, question for you. Oh, hi, Ava.
Ava. And you say, Can you say hi?
Say good night.
Can you say good night? Hi.
Hello and goodbye.
Very, very intrigued by all of you. Oh.
Her like first exposure to people is via the screen.
Yeah.
Say hello. Say bye-bye.
Say
Blow
bye,
kisses.
everybody. Okay, good night. Can you blow a kiss? Can you go blow a kiss?
Good night.
Oh,
Yay!
good
Good job, honey.
Ryan catches it.
It's nighttime. It's part of the procedure.
Absolutely. Gotta keep some routine up. Ryan, a question for you here. What do you see as kind of the main ways that you've seen your elected officials nurture the culture, that you've seen actually work among you and your friends in the arts community, or the people you hang out in the forests with, or etc.?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be getting to that human level, like we've kind of been discussing. When it seems like you're talking to a person, when it seems like there are people that are compassionate about other people and their well-being and the way that they're able to operate in the society. When things become more humanized, it's easier to know who you're talking to, who you're supporting. That's really hard when it comes to things as such as a big scale, like this election. And it's easy to lose track and to think of it as a machine. So, I mean, even being on this call right now and being able to see everybody and hear the words, I think that you guys exist. I can't prove it. I know Maria's in the other room. Regardless, that means a lot to me. And it is things like that stick out to, I suppose, me and other artists that I've talked to in the area, when there is that support, whether it be financially backed and maybe their physical form isn't there, but you know that it's being supported, it's being listened to, it's being heard. It edifies the voice that we know that we have. It's good validation when that humanizing factor is there. So.
Yes, speaking of validating each other and using our own voices, if you are streaming in from Twitch, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I will try my hardest to catch them. I'm kind of flipping back, between Twitch and Zoom here. So we're doing the best we can per usual, and we'll just kind of keep going. All right, let's kind of dive in to the primary election that's coming up. I know Monday is a due date. I think what is a little bit confusing for people right now are the due dates for registering to vote, as well as the due dates to get your mail-in ballot and to get that sent back in. Can one of you, either Gabby or Senator Vargas, kind of explain the process right now and the due dates that we have in Nebraska to make sure that you get your ballot hopefully mailed into you on time and sent back in time to be counted?
Yes. So the deadline to register is actually Monday. You can register online also, but it has to be done by midnight, which is actually a pretty special day because it's my birthday. So if you're gonna give me a birthday present, go register or get someone else to register. It'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, you have to be registered by April 27th, midnight. And then the deadline to return your early voting applications is on Friday, May 1st. And you'll receive, I believe I have it somewhere, it's a postcard that was sent to all registered voters in the county, and all you have to do is fill it out. If you want to mail it back, you put a post stamp on it and mail it back. Or if not, you can fill it out, take a picture, and at the bottom there's an email address. Send the picture to the commission.
Yeah, I think that's a really nifty feature that we have right now to be able to use for people especially people at my age right now aren't really mailing things as much. Maybe people are taking up postcards and love letters and stuff. I know my brother got a little love letter the other day with some perfume sprayed on it, and I was a little bit jealous.
Oh.
So if anybody wants to send me a spritz of what they smell like, you know.
All I got was a carrier pigeon, so.
All I get through the mail is bills.
What was that?
All I get through the mail is bills.
Like, yeah.
I keep getting these things from candidates. It's very, very annoying.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing those dates with us. I think Doris, lovely Doris, posted them on the Facebook event page too, if you need to like see them in writing. Otherwise, do you guys have any other online resources that people can go to find out this information? Maybe Civic Nebraska?
There is. Oh, I know Heartland Workers Center. They have the links to register on our website, which is www.heartlandworkerscenter.org. We have the links for that information and a lot of other information that's very amazing and useful. But we also have links on there, and I'm sure other organizations have them too.
And the only thing I'll say, in addition to that is, the best go-to, since this is Douglas County, in addition to HWC, and I give my shout out to Commissioner Ryan Cruz and Chris Carithers, the Deputy Commissioner, for trying to make this the safest possible election, and that's a difficult thing for the largest county in the state, and so they're doing everything they can in collaborative with the Secretary of State. And so their website is votedouglascounty.com. And so if you have questions about the voter registration that Gabby mentioned, or the vote by mail, they'll have the most up-to-date information on that there.
Awesome. And speaking of keeping people safe during this election, I'm very thankful that we're doing mail-in ballots. On the other hand of things, how are people at the polls? There's so many questions I have to ask in this question. I'm trying to sort that all out. First of all, I know Governor Ricketts is not going to move with the election at all, which is totally fine. We need to have elections. But how are we going to keep our poll workers safe? How are we going to find out if polling places close before the election dates? How would constituents find out? I know in South Korea, they just had a recent election, and they were taking the temperature of people before they could even come into their polling places. Are we going to do anything like that to protect not only our neighborhoods and communities, but also the polling place workers who, at least the ones in where I vote, tend to be of that 60 age plus and more vulnerable to COVID-19?
So this is Senator Vargas. So the only thing I'll say is, this is uncharted territory for all of us. And I know that the Secretary of State and all the election commissioners have been working to try to find solutions to making this as safe as possible. Some of that is restricting the in-person voting, which I think was a really good step in the right direction. And I think the other thing is they are preparing to ensure that they can do in person on the day, at the election locations for each precincts. But they're really pushing, and appropriately so, they're pushing vote by mail. We've seen unprecedented numbers of vote by mail, and my hope is more people do that, because if it turns out that we can really reduce the amount of exposure for people to actually vote in person, we're doing everybody a service here. And so I know that they are ready and are working on getting all their volunteers and getting them trained. I know PPE, all the personal protective equipment is being provided, either from their own budget or from the state, either from their own state budget, or the federal government has provided emergency funds for the elections. And so that those funds will then help make sure that there's all the different safety precautions that any of the precincts would need. And so, no different from what we're seeing in some of our, some businesses that we're seeing taking precautions and, wearing masks, gloves, sanitizing and cleaning places, and reducing the number of actual interactions. All those things are things being put into place for this. But that goes without saying, if you have the opportunity, please do vote by mail. You have until May 1st. It is very, very easy. It's the safest way, but I'm encouraging everybody to go down that route.
So I know in Arizona, when you register to vote by mail, you can also register to keep that for the next general election or just for the rest of your voting lifetime, which should be your entire lifetime. But is that a possibility in Nebraska, or when you register for your vote by mail ballot, it's just for this election?
Yeah, so it's available for Nebraska too. I think the first time that you fill out the early voting application, the early voting ballot application, there is a check mark that you check, and then every election you'll get a letter. Hey, you voted early last election. Would you like to do the same? And then you just say yes, and you vote from home.
Awesome. Ryan, have you registered to get your in-mail ballot, or have you gotten it yet?
I have not.
Have not
Okay.
registered?
No.
So you know how to do that now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I tabbed everything on my phone too. So.
Just remember, Monday, midnight.
On Monday, midnight.
Yeah,
Happy
everybody
birthday.
do that as soon as this is over, or set a timer for yourself. Okay, and then speaking of in-mail ballots, I know that generally Trump and the Republicans, and this was a question from my 92-year-old grandmother who was concerned about this, but, you know, fraud from mailing in ballots, whether that be people filling it out for other people or in the counting process, you know, what is the legitimacy of there being fraud because more people are mailing in their ballots versus going into polling places? Because she's terrified of that. That's like her big fear. And I'm like, you do realize like gerrymandering is maybe a little bit worse? I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so here's the only thing I'll say. Normally, voter fraud is a conversation we have. We have this very often with voter ID conversations in the legislature, and that has not passed for several sessions on end. I think the important piece here is, do we have a system that is ensuring that everybody that is requesting it gets a ballot in their home, and there's a process to verify that as best as we possibly can. And we have that. I think there's always things that we can do to ensure there's better education on the behalf of people. What I try to remind people here is you're going to get a ballot at home. One of the most important pieces on whether or not your ballot is considered valid is going to be your signature. It's the main way to then see if you are that person. You know, I think we take it for granted. I mean, raise your hand if you have a credit card and you have not signed the back of that credit card. It's just been floating around being used for a really long time. Your signature, yeah, exactly, right, yeah, right. So every single one of you out there, you know, watching this, and we share it out, is that this, and I had to get mine out. It was a terrible picture, but that signature is going to be what is referenced when they're comparing signatures. If there's any question, about, your ballot. And so that's going to be important. And I just encourage everybody to take that seriously, but we really have not seen voter fraud in this state. It's so, what I tell people is it's a safe and secure system. And if you ever have questions or concerns, you can always double check your voter registration. And, the best people to contact are going to be your local election commissioners for, verifying things.
Thank you for that. Hopefully I'll share that with her this evening and tell her she has nothing to worry about. She's just a little, as they get older, they get a little bit more anxious. She lovingly passed on her anxiety to me. So it's good to, a lot of people may think that because it's getting repeated and repeated on the news cycles and or from other politicians, not in this state or in this state. I'm not sure, but it is important to try to get the facts out there about what voting is like. And I understand that the need to want to have that confirmation that your vote is being taken for what it is. So thank you, Senator Vargas, on that one. Okay, what else do we have on here? Okay, so kind of getting into the ballot. The first thing I noticed, at least on the Democratic ballot, is that there's 4 names, even though there's only one person technically still in the race. And so then I wondered, is it worth it for me to vote for who I actually want to vote for on this? Or do I need to only vote for Joe Biden because he's the only one left? So I guess I'm just kind of curious to hear, your guys' take on that. Like, does that matter for delegates, etc.?
I wonder the same thing, so I would let somebody else that knows more about how that works. I mean, it's a real question that I would have to.
All right, that's all you, Senator Vargas.
Yeah. So here's the only thing I'll say. Here's technically you can vote for anybody you want. All those individuals that are on that ballot qualified on our state laws to then be on the presidential ballot. And because they qualified, everybody out there has the ability to vote for that individual. The issue here is everybody has dropped out. And so everybody is conceded, dropped out, and formally has either endorsed or stayed out of supporting, Vice President Biden for the Democratic side. And so he is the presumptive nominee at this point. And so largely this won't affect anything in regards to who the nominee is going to be, given that everybody has basically, endorsed him. But it's everybody's independent vote. People write in vote-ins all the time. I remember, one year I wrote in a friend because I thought he was really qualified for the job, and I didn't think the options I had in front of me were fair. And if in the end everybody, wrote in the same person, I think there could be a tidal wave of change. Your vote still matters, but in this instance, for the Democratic primary, we know who the primary winner is right now, and it is Vice President Biden. So people get to make that choice. I think it's important we still have that choice.
Mm-hmm. And I remember kind of chatting with you earlier this week. I wanted to ask you the same question because I was confused on it. And then I was like, okay, well, if Nebraska would have had their primaries before everyone dropped out or conceded, would our votes would they have more weight? And then if so, is it possible to then change the date of our Nebraska primary, or doesn't the entire country have the primary on the same day?
Oh.
If I'm assuming right, because we hear all this,
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff about the Iowa caucus and how important it is and how everybody's paying attention to it, which it's like, okay, well then it seems like our neighbor's vote matters then more than my vote.
So what I like to say, my understanding here is, and we briefly had this conversation, is if we wanted to do the caucuses early, we can have a really early caucus date. I would be very pissed at us, as would Nevada. But in doing that, being the first, that's a choice that the party systems can make. But for the actual primary and the voting, that's a whole different other story that will have to be changed in law. But yeah, earlier states have more at stake. And so I think that's why we're in the scenario we are right now, where you voting for, let's say, Elizabeth Warren, in Iowa at the caucuses versus voting for her now on the ballot at this period of time mean entirely different things.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, oh, sorry. Okay, so we have a question coming in from the live stream that there were a few polling places that were changed or closed. Do we have any idea of that being repeated this year? And then if so, how will their constituents find out about that?
I'm actually looking to make sure I have the right information.
I'm sorry, what was the question? I couldn't hear that well.
A few years ago, there were some polling places that were either changed or shut down without their constituents getting the memo of that. How would we know if that would happen in our districts or at our polling places?
I believe an article came out on Wednesday that there are some polling places closing. I wasn't sure which ones off the top of my head. There's a paper that has the list, but I would highly suggest always keeping in contact with the commission office or any organization that has to do with voting and trying to get the vote out, or even your representative. Keeping in contact with them and calling or checking their updates on what they're thinking or what they're doing.
Is there a website that would have that information that people could check out?
What?
Is there a website that people can go to, or where was that article? I guess I asked for a website in case people don't subscribe to the Omaha World Herald.
I don't have the article with me, but I can find it.
Also, I'm curious, maybe a silly question, why were they closing those locations?
Great question.
So this is Tony. The only thing I'll say, at least the reason why they're closing many locations is schools. There might be some changes in locations for schools. There are some, either libraries or nursing homes that were locations in the past. And so, as you can imagine, if it's in a place where you have a high risk population during this time, it might not be somewhere where you would want to have a polling place still. And so that's some of the reasons why some polling places will change, but some polling places are also going to be consolidated so that, we're not spreading ourselves much too farther out. My best information for you is go to votedouglascounty.com. Everybody should look up and can look up their voter registration, and it shows them where their polling location is. And that's the easiest way to get the most up-to-date information. It gets updated regularly by the county election commissioner.
I see. So, and if I just moved, do I update my address via that website in specific?
Yep, you're going to have to update your voter registration first, and then that will update your where you're voting. But that's why you got to do it before the deadline, so that it's a trickle down. That's got to get updated, and that means then once you're registered, it's got to update in the system where your actual polling location is, if you decide to do that. But we hope you do vote by mail.
Yes, register.
Yeah, so just to reemphasize what Senator Vargas said, the Douglas County Election Commission on their website, it does have the polling locations and the changes that they're doing. And just to emphasize to what they're doing on North Omaha, I know some of the towers where people live, at apartments, those were voting locations, polling places. And just because of the safety of people, I mean, it's very important, but because of that reason, they are closing them to avoid having too many people in an enclosed place. But yeah, I would highly just first suggest vote by mail if you can. It's just to keep everybody safe. Vote by mail, and if not, check the votedouglascounty.com website.
Yeah, vote by mail is the coolest way to do things right now.
The coolest.
The cool one.
All the cool kids are voting by mail.
Yeah, all the kids are. You can tell how old I am. I'm still using the word. Very cool.
I need more street credit, so okay, noted.
Yeah, street cred.
Ryan, what else?
Right now.
Ryan, in your community, whether it be your music community, your art community, or otherwise, what issues do you see people really leaning in on that they want to hear their opinions of the elected officials that they're going to be voting for? What are the most, the biggest issues that they want prioritized?
biggest issues prioritized. Perhaps,
Oh, go ahead.
perhaps a steady, I don't know, a steady transition perhaps back into normalcy, and knowing just how to do that. I mean, as far as art is concerned, there's the intimacy that makes it unique and that sets everybody apart. There's an experience, and when you're there listening and living in that moment, and you're not thinking about how rent is due next week or how you have to wake up early for work, but there's this moment of preservation, and if you could hold on to it, you'd stay there. So as that is so important then for many people to experience, as if to better understand themselves, sort of better craft their ideologies and their beliefs. Much harder to do that when we can't all experience it together. So not being able to have a treat as such is detrimental to artists right now. So I would hope, and I suppose everybody else that I've talked to is concerned with how do we transition back into normalcy, with all due respect to what's going on. And I would hope that that's prioritized, that laws or the encouragement or recommendation that's being passed by those in authority that are stating you should stay closed or you can open up now, that it's something that we can trust in. I mean, but that's tough. I mean, I know on the 4th, restaurants and things of the like are opening back up. I don't agree with it. I think it's too soon. I don't know the full weight of that. I don't know how crippled each business actually is, other than the horror stories I have heard and do hear every single day. I'm not one of those businesses. I'm simply an artist that wishes to practice my craft when it's right again. But I don't know what the transition should look like.
Yeah.
That's my concern, though, is that it's done right. And because if it isn't, and there's a bounce back, and we go through this again, we will lose so much more confidence in that authority, which we're clinging so closely to right now. And some of us just waiting to be directed, waiting for orders. Some of us pushing back, thinking that this quarantine was a giant waste of time and that we shouldn't be told what to do, and that we shouldn't have had our jobs stripped from us, and so on and so forth. So the priority, I suppose, then would be, slipping back into normalcy, and being able to trust somebody's word.
Absolutely. I
feel
like I tweeted something today about what's the point of reopening, restaurants and keeping it at 50% capacity when servers go in between table to table. And I feel like a lot of the people in our community, Ryan, who are artists or musicians, also double in the service industry and are really, I had one of my friends respond and say, I'm scared for my life to have to go into work, because if we have to open up, I have health concerns. And so it's like, do I go off unemployment and voluntarily quit my job because I'm too scared to go into work in this service industry? Or do I go make money at the expense of potentially risking my life? I think when our elected officials, when there's such a risk in their leadership and where their leadership takes us, it can be really scary. And so finding solace and comfort in what the right decision is and being led into is really crucial, but that's hard to find in such unprecedented circumstances.
Yeah.
I'm still processing the words that just came out of my mouth. So,
and that's, and one, this is tactical, but that, even that distinction right now about unemployment. So if people are choosing to then not show up, being called back to work, they can't apply for unemployment. That's the stipulation right now that the executive branch and Governor Ricketts has publicly said, that you choose to then not go to work and you're called back into the work now are open. You now no longer, you don't have that choice. You have to work. You can't apply for unemployment benefits. You don't qualify. It is a very tricky place to be. And, and I struggle with this not as a business owner. It's because I'm hearing this from business owners. I have business owners that are very eager to start back up because the inability to bring in, to survive, not even thrive, survive and get back to a place where they were, and bring back their employees. They have the livelihood that is connected to that is just so difficult, and they have a responsibility and a weight on their shoulders. But then there's also the inside voice of, but is this the most appropriate and right and responsible thing to do? Businesses aren't themselves. I view businesses as stewards of social good and community good as much as they are drivers of employment and provide necessary services. And so they are in a really difficult place, and I do applaud those. I've had several, even just yesterday, I was talking to a couple businesses and over the phone, and they're trying to figure out whether or not it is the right thing to open up when you can. What signal does that send to the community, their own neighborhood? And are they putting people potentially in more harm's way? But they also know we have to get to a place where we can open and it be a new normal, not the same. It's not going to ever be the same anytime soon. And they're like, so what point do we get there? And I think people feel uncomfortable right now because we haven't hit that high water mark of the break of the number of cases, and that concerns people.
Yeah, not only have we not hit that, but we keep on doubling. And I've had people say to me, well, that's just in Grand Island. That's just because of the meat packing plants. I'm like, okay, well, that's a job where people congregate, which is an essential job. But as soon as that comes and it happens in your community, the rates are still going to just go up just as high as they did there. It doesn't matter that it's just in Grand Island right now, and how many of us have relatives there, or how many people there are trying to escape Grand Island because it is a hot spot, or the other counties, and then traveling to other small towns or even Omaha and Lincoln and bringing that with them. It's a hard thing to.
And if I can get this off my chest, because it infuriates me, and you're saying it, and that's why I appreciate you so much, Maria. We are living in a time where there are professionals' only job has been to prepare for issues that we're currently facing. That proactively public health professionals have been preparing for incidents of pandemics. And doctors have been preparing for how do we make sure we are caring for people. And in a time where that is what we're facing, and it comes in conflict with other things, not everyone is fully listening to all of our health professionals that are on the front lines as much. And Grand Island's a perfect example. We have doctors that are afraid and concerned for the public health of those individuals, and it is the number 2 place for growth for any city in the United States right now. And so, I share this with people because I want people to feel because it's not happening to you or your family, just because it's not in our backyard, doesn't mean that we are not somehow affected or it could not happen to us. A disease spreads through community contact. And in a week, we're going to be back in a normal or in a different way, opening back up our directed health measures. And people need to be prepared and understand the risks that what we do, we could become more of a hotspot and we could grow. It could flatten, and it's dependent on what we do differently in our interactions with people and businesses. But we're not going to listen to our health professionals in this time. Who are we going to listen to?
Thank you for that. I was also just given a 10-minute thing, and of course this always happens to me where I have 4 whole pages of questions left, so we're gonna do our best to get through as much as we can here. I kind of want to hit the census now. Senator Vargas, you mentioned a bunch of different programs that money comes in through there. And can you guys explain where to go to fill out the census, how to fill it out, and who to count, whether it's your family or your household? How should college students be counting themselves with having to leave campus and or go back home? Just give us a little bit of explanation on that. I know that this is my first census as an adult above. Yeah, I mean, the last one happened when I was 15, so I wasn't really paying attention as much back then to this stuff. So this is all new to me. So please, give me some good advice and tips on this.
I have some, but Gabby, I want to see if you have any first. I got a few.
Yeah, so this is actually my first census too, to fill out on my own as an adult, on my own household. So great. It's very short, actually. There's the website for it, and it's just like a less than 10 questions that you have to fill out. It's pretty easy, just very straight to the point. How many people are there? What's their name? And that's it. And it does ask about pets, but you don't include those. Sadly, I have one. But it's very easy. Just go to the website, or also they sent the postcard size census. I know I got mine, but I filled it out online. But it's just like a short paper to fill out. What's your name, your family, everybody that resides in your house, and then that's it. It's very simple for such a big impact that it has. And just to reiterate, there's no scary questions there. There's just how many people, your name, their names. That's it.
No document status or citizen status like that?
No, it's just names.
The only thing I'll add, that was fantastic. The only thing I'll add is the website is pretty easy. It is 2020census.gov, and it's very clear. It's very easy to understand, and there is a place for if you have questions. If you are a special living situation individual, like a student, a service member, a person in a correctional facility, they'll provide you with some direction. But you can do it online. Obviously, you can do it by phone. Only one person in each household should be completing the census. And so the less than 10 questions, I believe it's 9 questions, only one person should be completing that. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. And although the deadline has been extended, we are all encouraging everyone to complete it as soon as they can so that we don't lose sight or don't forget. And also, as a competitive nature, as Nebraska, we're still in the top 5. I can't remember where we are right now, but we have the ability to continue to be number 1, and this is a great place for us to get some positive press. And I am the chair of the Legislative Planning Committee. It's our long-term planning committee for the Nebraska legislature. This is a particularly important issue for us because not only do we use this for figuring out funding, for the federal government funding to us for programs, it also helps us to then better prepare for redistricting and for drawing political boundaries this next year. And we can't do that without an accurate census. And so everybody should go to 2020census.gov and complete that as soon as you can. One person in your household only.
Yeah, and just to emphasize, we are number 3 in the country right now. We are a little over 60%. So it's not a competition, but it's a friendly competition amongst let's be number 1. Everybody filled out the census, and just some of the things that it affects is after school programs, lunches in the schools, financial aid for college students, so it affects also public support like firefighters, people that help us in the community, and healthcare. It affects it a lot. Roads also, that we see a lot of constructions, but it is being affected by how many people fill out the census. And as Senator Vargas said, they're restricting of the community.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna.
One last thing with that, the information, so that everybody knows. You said this, but I'm saying it out loud. It is completely confidential. All the data that goes to the census by law cannot be shared with other agencies. Specifically, what I think matters here is law enforcement or ICE or immigration.
Absolutely.
And so I want all individuals to know that are completing it, no matter who they are or what their status is.
Yeah, historically, these immigrants and people of color, we can even get into renters or LGBTQ plus folks, have been undercounted. So kind of going off of that and the future of the planning for Nebraska, not only what are you doing to make sure that those folks get counted, but what are you doing, Senator, to also make sure that those folks get the funds that they need that we receive from the census? How do you make sure that that's directly being affected in those specific communities, especially because in light of COVID-19, a lot of them have, maybe not the best housing or are dependent on SNAP during this time, especially if they're either A, essential workers, or B, have been let go. What is the Nebraska long-term plan for those folks to make sure that they get the right funding?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll say this. We don't have a plan for how that funding gets to them. That's not, I guess, we don't think of it that way. I think step one is let's make sure, based on our need, we get all the funding that is necessary for those individuals. That's step one. And so getting a complete count enables us to do that. Step two, when over these next several months and into the session, our goal is to make sure that all the programs that I mentioned, that Gabriela mentioned, that we've talked about here, that we're supporting those programs and ensuring that those funds are going out to the right people. So like Medicaid, we get money for Medicaid. There's a certain amount of money we get, and we want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence so that everybody knows about it that could qualify. And things like Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, other things that you might see in important programming. We need to do everything we can to reach out to the community. The most important thing is we have the funding already allocated. And now our job over the next year and every year is to work with the executive branch and the departments to get that money out, because they're largely directing and managing and governing those programs. So that's what our job is, that accountability of getting it out. But they're managing actually getting those resources out to people.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'll ask my last, question now. Okay. So since we've all had to pivot our lives in the state of COVID, and we shouldn't be protesting out in the streets together, or gathering in large groups to make our voices heard. What's the best way to do that now? And Senator Vargas, how can your constituents best help you right now? Gabby, how can we harness our people power to make sure that our communities are getting counted the way they need to be counted and are voting by mail?
Before I answer that one, I think going back to what Senator Vargas was saying, this also goes back to the importance of filling out the census. I think I was talking with my senior organizer, Abby, and we're talking about the census, and I think that an important part about filling out the census and who you are, where you come from, your heritage, your ethnicity, is because it also counts how many people of the same ethnicity is in the area. So therefore, resources also go into there for that part. So it plays a big part for such a small paper to fill out. It's very important. But I think, how can we stay engaged and make sure that we're still active? Join us to Phone Bank or other organization, Phone Bank. Talk with your family, talk with your friends. Share the importance that it is to vote, to safely vote from home, to fill out the census, because it will affect us in the long run. But once this is all better and we can be in the same room again, let's advocate. Let's build relationships with our representatives. Let's build relationships with our neighbors. Let's understand each other. I think right now let's remember that our voice, it's powerful, and our voice is voting is a way to use our voice. So when we all come together and use the powerful voice that we have by voting, our communities become better. And so it's like that. I think of it because I do have a 7-year-old, and I have nieces and nephews that will be growing here in Nebraska. So how can I advocate with my neighbors, with my family, to make it better? It's already a great state, so how we can only make it better by working. And I would just like to invite everybody that can to join us in phone banking and making sure that you're talking to your friends and family, like, hey, just send them a quick text. Don't forget to register. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to fill out the census. It takes less than 10 minutes. And then we can go back to doing TikToks.
You know, the only thing I'll say, how people can stay engaged is, I mean, you heard it from Gabby. The best way to stay engaged right now is to continue to build relationships with the right advocacy and community organizations and nonprofits. And we didn't get to talk too much about this, but I think there's going to be a new wave of how things are going to change. And the way they change is going to be dependent. There's no crystal ball. I think people are looking for answers on what's going to be different. You know, how's our economy going to be different? How's government going to be different? How's our way we work going to be different? And there are scenarios, you know, and on what it can look like. We can do economic analysis of that, but we don't know what humanity and culture is going to look like differently, because that is highly dependent on how we as individuals change and adapt in this new way. There's a whole different world where we can focus on the have-nots and the barriers and the difficulties, and that could lead to a lot of different things. You know, there's countries that are thinking about having immunity certificates, and if you can imagine what that might do to a society if we are judging people on whether or not they do or do not have not had the virus or not. So there's different routes. My hope is one of the routes we go down, and that I think can only lead to positive, is we approach more of the work that we do with humility and compassion. It's the best way that I hope becomes part of the new normal here, because then if there's a business that opens next week, we're not judging them for making the worst decision in the world on behalf of them, their family and their employees and their community. But we're also not viewing it as we shouldn't expect a high health standard for what they're doing. We shouldn't expect more from them. And for individuals that are making the choice to then not open up, we're not judging them for then not paying their employees or creating economic opportunities or getting things back to normal. But they might be prioritizing the health and well-being and are really couching in their own concerns. So I really hope that we give each other grace, because the relationships, teachers and parents and students, the relationships between meatpacking plants right now, workers, employees in the community, the relationships between, grocery stores and the people that are going into if we don't find a way to dig in deep and assume the best, that is going to define how we as a state and our communities get through this in the future.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much. Ryan, what have you learned tonight? What are you going to do going forward to help the artists and musicians and other people in our community, who maybe didn't get to tune in tonight? What are you going to take to them?
There's a lot of pressure, I suppose, on each individual, but I think a lot of people are feeling alone right now, and I think there's a lot of information that can be distributed that can make people feel less alone. And I feel like tonight I've gained some more insight as to how to feel less singled out, how to feel less of an island, and more of a stable force. Though the community doesn't exist in the way that I remember it before all of this, it can still exist and empower us as individuals. I suppose it's just more of a confidence in the way that I carry myself around others.
Beautiful. All right, you guys, thank you so much for sharing your night with me and your knowledge and for the rest of the folks out there. We're going to take a quick little few second, 2-minute wipe down of the mic, and then Ryan's going to come out here and perform for all of us. We're actually going to switch the mic to be extra healthy and clean. Okay, so stand by for that, everybody. Thank you, Senator Vargas and Gabby.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, great. Well, I've had a little bit of time to myself over the past month, so I'm going to play a couple of songs that I wrote. And, yeah, this one's called Texoma Blues. Capture what it's like to truly give yourself the answer where in mind you really spread your wealth. It's not to justify each payment for your health. The answer where in mind you really spent your wealth. This rapture swallowed up a time made for to love. Hearts were beating out, now we're going from a push to shove. And all that thankful notion swimming in one place, fruiting, looting, panic, bringing an embrace. Like the rain, you'll tap upon my tin. Will I sit smoking, sitting until the thoughts begin. Like white knuckles balled up, pushing blood aside. Will I sit blinking, drinking until the thoughts reside? Like the rain, you'll tap up on my tin. Will I sit staring, smoking until the thoughts begin? Like white knuckles balled up, pushing blood aside. Will I sit blinking, drinking until the thoughts reside? And in that braid I'll feel convicted to repeat the time I heeded call and tossed away my receipt. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. I was down south in Georgia right before everything closed up and got canceled, and I was with my group, Thick Paint. Hi, Amin, Graham, Sarah, Ashley, wherever you are. And the tour got canceled right around then. And so, instead of coming home because I had so much time off, I pulled a naughty and went camping for a while. I was keeping my distance from everybody, so it's not like, I was close quarters by any means with anything but a campfire and my partner Ashley. And I wrote that song. It's called Texoma Blues. We camped on Lake Texoma. It's right on the border of Oklahoma and Texas. And yeah, it's about the distance you feel, but how in that distance you feel convicted to perhaps invest more. So the last line says, to toss away a receipt is a metaphor perhaps for thinking, well, this thing's going to work, but you're putting faith in that thing to work. I think there's a lot of metaphors there, so let your brain do the math. This next one I'm playing, what was I going to do? It's going to be called Little Less Limbo. You know what it feels like to be in limbo? I am feeling a little less limbo today. Looks like it's good to keep nothing at bay. I beat my conventions, then went on to dream. Life's always made harder than it does seem. I am feeling a little less limber today. Table dashing, mental lashing, I paved the way. I'll leave town soon, will it knock us down? Maybe this time we will take a different route. Usually, like, the live band plays this really crazy, like, 3, 4, 5, 6, 420 wild trip hop part there. But I'll just go into the next verse. I am feeling a little less confident today. Learn how not to give my human away. Why can't I blow my whole load on loving you? Because I am feeling a little less limbo today. I've learned not to give it all away. Yeah. Yeah, we got this part. It's like the guitar goes. And then the band comes back in right there. And then everything cuts out and it's me and Capella Williams. He goes, whoop, and then we bass in there. And then Luke Annis goes, whoop, with the trombone. It's super cool. When we can all get back together and hang out, show vibes, come watch my band and How play. It's really good stuff. I enjoy them. I miss you guys. Much love. Talking to you, microphone. Okay, I'm going to move on to a next song. I've just got a couple more. This is an old tune. It's called Invisible Horses. 1, 2, 3. I've been keeping a tab on myself, making sure that the dust stays on the shelf, making a list, hitting the coast, telling a story not to boast. Here comes the tide. Woo! We laid down in a lilac field after plucking a slug who came to yield in a redwood path beyond the bridge. Love like a soft cloud off the ridge. Invisible horses. It's actually surprisingly easy to whistle through the mask. I saw a rodeo east of the sea. Why are you scared? She said to me. I'm burnt to a crisp like my old heart. I don't want to trip before I start. Terrible sunlight. A shoe with no sole, a flag with no pole. Just like an actor with no role, a prince with no toad, a jack with no road, a lack with no day to hold its load. Ooh. Thank you. What do you think? Yeah, one more? Cool. I'll play one more song. This is my last tune. And I do believe... What was I going to play? Yeah. Let's go on to the third capo there. Okie doke. Well, hey, thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks to Gabby and Tony and Maria. We've got Phil and B here as well. It's nice to be around people again. It's nice to feel that comfort. It's been a second, so I appreciate it. Yeah, the song's called These Old Wheels. Silence is golden, some they say. Well, some they say, well, I say silence is a nameless time to kill. It's a restless feeling that's pounding on my brain both night and day. But these old wheels of mine spin loud, oh so loud. Yes, the sky would surely fall if my dear eardrums did fail to beat another time or time around. Some may make it out alright, and some may never know. But these old wheels of mine spin loud, oh so loud. Silence is golden, some they say. Well, some they say, well, I say that silence is an aimless time to kill. It's a restless feeling pounding on my brain both night and day. But these old wheels of mine spin loud, oh so loud. Yes, the sky would surely fall if my dear eardrums did fail to beat another time around. Yeah, the chirp of summer crickets or tree frogs croak. Yeah, these old wheels of mine spin loud, oh so loud. Silence is golden, some they say. Well, some they say, well, I say silence is a nameless time to kill. It's a restless feeling pounding on my brain both night and day. But these old wheels of mine spin louder as it builds. Cool. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks, Maria. Nite Caps.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. I miss all of you here. I was like looking down at the rest of our spaces and was just like, I wish this room was full. But know that my heart is full. Just getting to learn from so many amazing leaders in our community and from you guys. Thanks for always asking amazing questions that need to be asked of from our guests. Thank you, Ryan, for performing, and Senator Vargas and Gabby and the rest of the HWC crew for all the work you've been doing. Don't forget, Monday, register to vote, request that mail-in ballot, register for the census. You know, DM me when you do. I'll give you a little virtual pat on the back. Why not? And if you can, keep supporting Outer Spaces. We're so lucky to have this place, and I'm so thankful for all the support that they bring to Nite Caps. And I'm going to take a little break after these last two Nite Caps, and my phone's broken, so I'm going to be offline for a while. I'll let you know when I'm back. Okay, thanks so much, you guys.